Welcome everybody to this evening's Q&A session. We'll chant a couple mantras and we'll get started. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Okay, everyone. How's everybody feeling tonight? Good? Everybody's got their nice turbans on? Love it, love it. We're taking questions for the next hour and a half. Oh, look at that. Usually I have to coax the first one out, but we're ready to go here. Cersei, what do you have to ask?
All right, Krishna. My question is, can you explain the difference between a bona fide guru and a non-bona fide guru, and the importance of following the right one for us, and also the teachings that are bona fide? I know it's very vague, but I don't know. I have a lot of stuff on my mind, and how do we find the right path for us? And yeah, okay.
Okay, so that's about as broad a question as can get. So would you like me to start with how to find the right path, or would you like me to start with what is a real guru and what is not? Start there? So this is something we've been, every year I come here and I do this every night for a month. And each year there's a certain question that keeps coming up. Last year was all about how do I find my purpose somehow. And this year it's a lot about how do I understand what a guru is? So both are important questions. And I suppose if one was born and raised outside of the yoga tradition, the authentic yoga tradition, or you could also say the tradition of Vedanta, then it might appear that a guru is just someone that seems to know a lot, that carries a certain air of enlightenment. But if you come from the tradition, then the guru's seen as a representative. This is key. It's not that they're claiming that I had a mystical experience and now suddenly everything was revealed to me, and now I know things that other people don't know. And here we go. But it's more that it's a recognition of the tradition itself. And when I say the tradition, I mean there's a body of literature, which we can call the Vedic literature broadly. And it's a large collection of books. The faith within the tradition is that this knowledge that comes through these books is not it's not subject to the flaws that let's say human-made knowledge is prone to. So it's said that there's a vibration that is always here. It's always in the atmosphere. There's nowhere that it's not. There's information floating through the air. And I've shared this before, but that might sound mythological. That might sound to a lot of people like some kind of fairy tale. Information doesn't just float in the air. But of course, if we would have said that to someone several centuries ago, I think they would have a better argument. But we do recognize that right here in the atmosphere that we're all sitting in, even if we just said underneath this tent right now, or even if you just said, within a square foot of this phone, that there's a huge body of knowledge that if you just have the right technology, you can tap right into it and access it. So everything that's on YouTube is floating through this air right here, all of it, right? And so much more. That's a huge, vast body of knowledge. And so the yogis are saying, just like nowadays, where if you have the right technology, you can tap into this information that's floating through waves, through the ether, that always there's knowledge floating through this. This is before we had YouTube and the internet and radio and television, that there's always knowledge floating through the vibrations. And this particular knowledge was called the Veda. The Veda simply means, it's just as generic a term as you can get. It means the knowledge. And yogis, through their practices, could become sensitive enough and well fine-tuned to be able to tap into that body of knowledge and then bring it down and share it. And if you go far into the past, many centuries into the past, that knowledge would be tapped into by a sage, by a yogi, and then they would share it. It would come in the form of mantras or verses. They would chant those Sanskrit verses with certain intonations, and they would train themselves to chant them with intonations, with different bodily movements. They would do it in a group, and in this way they would hand down this vast body of knowledge through chanting these mantras, through memorization. It was all done through memorization, which also sounds a bit far-fetched, that such a large body of knowledge could be handed down through memory. But is it really so far-fetched? I remember when I was, something like 12 years old or something, they came out with this new invention. It was a big thing. It may not sound like a big thing now, but it was a big thing then. And it was called the Sony Walkman. Do some of you remember when that first came out? It was like, this thing is so small. You put these little things in your ear, and the sound is like really good. We were surprised, like how good the sound quality was. And you'd have this little box. You put a cassette tape in it, and you could also record with it. And so think that relatively simple piece of technology has the ability to memorize whatever it hears. Why couldn't a far more sophisticated, well-developed machine like the human brain remember that and so much more? And so the yogis would do that. And I even heard just very recently, some of you may have seen this in the news, but in South India, I'm not sure, somewhere in Tamil Nadu, I believe, that some young man, it looks like he was about 20 years old or something, was just given all kind of rewards because he had memorized vast bodies of the Vedic literature, right? So people can still do it. So in any case, knowing that in this age that we live in now, called the Kali Yuga, these texts say people will have relatively short lives. They'll be relatively unlucky. They'll be relatively misguided. And above all, always disturbed. This manda sumanda matayo manda bhagya upadrutaha. This is predicted thousands of years ago that in this age, people would have these disturbed minds and weak minds, short lifetimes, and they wouldn't be so expert at memorizing like they were in the past. So therefore, there was one sage, Vyasadeva, and what he offered the world is practically beyond imagination. He tapped into that knowledge. He was entrusted for this age to tap into that body of knowledge, the Veda, which is incredibly vast, download a large part of it, and edit it, kind of divide it into different categories, and then get it down in written form. And so that's the body of knowledge that a guru draws from. I didn't come up with it on my own, but I'm drawing from that body of knowledge. And so therefore, again, it's not like they're saying I'm enlightened. But what the guru does is they're called the Shrotariam, Brahmanishtam. Shrotariam means that they've heard this body of knowledge. They've taken it in. They've processed it. They've learned it from their teacher, from the previous representative. And then what their idea is not that I'm coming up with something new. What I'm doing is I'm representing what was already there. They may present it in new words. They may speak it in a way that's most relevant to the audience that is present before them. They may know how to curate that knowledge for a certain time, certain circumstances, certain audience. But always their goal is to represent it rather than change it. Hand it down unchanged. The essence, the message has to be delivered unchanged. That is the Vedic culture. So much of a large part of it is preserving and handing down this eternal knowledge. The knowledge is said to be apurushaya, which means, literally, it means like no person. Apurusheya, no person created this. This is an eternal field of knowledge. So a guru, an authentic guru, isn't posing like, look at me, I've come up with this whole new insight. Rather, they're saying, I'm handing down this knowledge. Almost like a mailman. You know, we can look at it like a mailman. That's, in a sense, the mailman, they take a package and their goal is to deliver it unchanged, right? If they're given something for it, some respect, then they pass that back up, right? And so that's this also. You look for humility. Look for someone that sees themselves not as the master, but they see themselves as the servant. They see themselves as the humble servant of their guru. And in this way, you build a chain. That chain is called the Guru Parampara, right? It's handed down from a guru to a student. The student becomes guru, hands it down to the next student. That student becomes guru. And like this, the chain is handed down with great care to preserve the knowledge unchanged. That's a guru. Again, Shrotariyam, they've heard this knowledge, they've understood it. Brahmanishtam, they've embodied it. They've now they see the world through that knowledge, and it's informed their thinking process. It's informed their behavior, and through them, you should see a higher level of behavior. You should see someone with an even mind, whether it's hot or cold, whether they're being praised or being criticized, that their mind is even, right? That they can see the soul, the spark of spiritual energy in every living being. That they don't judge them based on their bodies, but they can see through the body and understand that we're all passing through changing bodies, one after another after another. Therefore, they show respect to every living entity. They have no enemies. They don't see it that way. They see beneath it. Even if a person is hostile to them, they understand that that's just the pure soul coming through a warped mind, right? But underneath it is the pure soul, right? They look at it as, I've been through many bodies myself. I've been man, I've been woman, I've been black, I've been white, I've been American, I've been Indian, I've been human, I've been animal, I've been plant, and I've gone through all these cycles. I've been sinner, I've been saint, I've been all of these things. I don't judge people based on where they're at right now. I don't judge them based on the body. I don't even really judge them based on the mindset, because I know that's something that changes. And I know I've gone through this life with a million different mindsets and many lives before that. So they have a way of being able to deal with the external circumstances, but always to be able to see what's lying underneath, that spark of spirit, and relate to that way. And also, they have this deep conviction that their own happiness is not dependent on anything external, that their real happiness is something that lies within, and it's something that I can always tap into. Right? Someone who is a guru is thinking like that, is moving through the world like that, right? They're kind, right? They have a kindness to them. They have a simplicity to them, and they're representing this knowledge and speaking it. And when they speak it, when they speak it, something awakens in you. If when they speak it, there's something ignited within your heart, now I understand. Now I understand that I don't know how many lifetimes I've been searching for happiness in all of these external things. I've been searching for happiness in the material things in life, in the objects or the circumstances that are bound by the influence of time, that are being shifted and changed. I try to grab onto something, whether it's a possession, whether it's a person or a relationship, whether it's a certain circumstance or a certain position, and I think it's going to deliver my happiness. I think it's always a step away. And when I attain that goal, I see that it begins to slip away from me. And as it starts to slip, I begin to feel anxiety, and the suffering starts already. Right? A person that's a guru, they're beyond that now. They know, they've come to terms with the external energy is always changing. I'm not searching for my satisfaction. I'm not searching for my pleasure. I'm not seeking shelter in that which is in a constant flux. But right here, I'm situated, right here in the heart. I know I'm here. I know that Amongst all the changing external energy, I'm steady. That doesn't change. And you can feel that in the person. You can feel that in the person. The guru is like that, right? Now, would you like me to talk about the second question? Like the path? And this is a big question. Like, how do we know what is the right path? The Bhagavad Gita is all about finding the right path. It's a relatively small book compared to many of the Vedic literatures. Like the Srimad Bhagavatam is 18,000 verses. There are other Puranas that are much more, 40,000, 80,000 verses. Bhagavad Gita is part of a huge epic that's 100,000 verses, but itself it's only 700 verses. And what the Bhagavad Gita does is it's Krishna himself speaking. He's identifying and validating all kinds of authentic paths that are there that one could find through this Vedic literature. He's speaking to them. Arjuna had an idea. Arjuna was on the battlefield. He was always powerful, dynamic, clear-headed, level-headed, heroic, fearless. But in that moment on that battlefield, he lost all of that. Somehow that all slipped away. And he turned to Krishna in a state of full-on anxiety. His voice was shaking. He was crying tears. He could barely talk. And he turned to Krishna, who he always related to as a friend. And he said, I'm approaching you now as your disciple. You please be my guru. You help me understand this. Help me understand what I should do. I'm thinking now, rather than being a warrior, which has always been my role, I would rather live as a beggar. I've achieved the material things in life that people strive for: fame, wealth, power and influence, etc., etc. But I don't have happiness. As a matter of fact, I'm full of anxiety. But I've lived in the forest. I've lived amongst the yogis in the forest. And I see that they don't have any of the things I have. No power, no influence, no money, no fame. But they have peace of mind. They have detachment from the things of this world. And they have an inner happiness that was always very clear to me. I feel like I want to be one of those yogis. I want to follow their path. I want to follow their path. And their path was like a beggar, right? Arjuna's path as a warrior was that he would defend, he would mete out justice, he would tax the citizens, and he would give in charity to those that needed it. Now he's saying, I want to live as the person that receives the charity. I want to live so simple and live off whatever they'll give to a beggar. And Krishna saying to him, Arjuna, you should become a yogi. But the path that you're talking about, if you were to follow it, this is essentially, I'm kind of paraphrasing Bhagavad Gita now, but he's saying if you were to follow that path, you might be sitting out in the forest under some banyan tree in seclusion, seated in a lotus asana with your eyes half closed, staring at the tip of your nose, trying to meditate. But where's your mind going to be? And where would Arjuna's mind be? If you read the story, you can understand it would be back on that battlefield. It would be back on that battlefield carrying out the vows that he promised his wife he would carry out. Fighting, shoulder to shoulder with his brothers. Defending the nation from horrible men that had taken it over. He wouldn't be thinking with resentment about all the wrongs that were done to him and his family, even though they were so good-hearted and noble. Could he settle his mind and just have peace? And if so, then why is he so disturbed in mind right now? Simply by walking away from the battlefield, you may remove your body from the battlefield, but it's not so easy to remove the mind. So a big question comes up regarding paths in the Bhagavad Gita. Krishna is going to speak about many different paths, but essentially he's going to divide them into two categories. One is called karma sannyasa. It means Karma means your action or your duties in this world. Sannyasa means to give them up. So one category of paths is where you walk away from family, from society, and all the roles that you have. You go off into the forest in seclusion. You remove yourself from all the attachments. Okay? And then the other path is called karma yoga. Karma yoga means you remain in your social roles. You embrace your social roles, but you carry them out in a completely different state of mind. You carry them out informed with the knowledge of a yogi. And you do them with detachment as a process of spiritual contemplation. And this was the path, at least this was the categories of paths that Krishna was asking Arjuna to follow. He was saying this is practical. Arjuna doesn't get it. Second chapter, he doesn't get it. Third chapter, he doesn't get it. Fourth chapter, he doesn't get it. Fifth chapter, he still hasn't gotten it. And so in the sixth chapter, what Krishna does is he begins to spell out what it looks like. Let's go into a bit of detail now, Arjuna. Okay. Sometimes I'm from New York. Sometimes people are visiting New York and they say, how do I get from Manhattan to Brooklyn? F train is one way. So someone might say, well, there's the F train. You know, you can take the subway. You could walk across the bridge. You could take a taxi. All of these have their pros and cons. Some are more expensive, but more convenient. Some are less expensive, but they take more time. You could take a subway. You could take a taxi. You could walk across the bridge, or you could swim. And then what if someone said, swim, that's it. That's the way to go. That's the authentic way to go. That's the real way to go. I want to swim. Where do I go and how do I do that? And then you say, no, but you don't understand. Theoretically, that's the way you could go. But it's winter. It's freezing cold. Most people that try to swim across that river are going to just die from the currents. What to speak of in the winter, hypothermia is going to set in about 10 minutes, and it takes at least 45 minutes to get across that river. I said you could swim across the river, but honestly, just in theory, one could do that. It would be a very rare person that could accomplish that. Much better that you take one of the other paths. But the person was like, no, I want to do that. But then you would spell it out. You'd spell out what it looks like, how cold it is, you know, how powerful the currents are. And then they would say, oh, I guess I can't do that. Then what can I do? And that happens in the sixth chapter. Krishna, he begins describing to Arjuna the path of dhyana yoga, or you could call it ashtanga yoga. The path where you sit alone in the forest and you go deep, deep, deep into your own mind. And he begins it like this. This is really interesting. Are you interested in hearing what he said? Let me hear you. Yeah. Okay. He says, Arjuna, to do this kind of yoga, it's not easy to settle the mind. Generally, people do it after they've let go of so much, towards the end of their life, and they go away like this. But he said, to do it, this is the qualification. It requires a lot of detachment. It requires a person that's already let go of so much. He says, people that can do this, they see pebbles, stones, and gold with an equal mind. Okay. Imagine this. Now, someone might say, I think I could do that. But think about it. Everybody ready to really get honest with yourself? Okay. Imagine someone walks up to you with a heavy duffel bag on their back. And they throw it down on the ground right in front of you. And when it hits the ground, it makes a loud smack. That's smacking sound because it's really heavy. And they say to you, within this bag is $200 million. It's mine. It belongs to me. I'm giving it to you. I don't want it anymore. The money is now yours. Please do with it as you wish. And then they walk off. Okay. Now you unzip the bag. You look inside, and indeed, the money is in there. And you suddenly realize this isn't a joke. This is for real. I now own $200 million. In that moment, what happens in the mind? What do you begin to think? Do you think, hold it, This changes everything. All the things that I want, I can go out and get. All the things that I don't want to do anymore, I don't have to do. I don't have to go to work anymore. I can get the apartment that I want. I can do this, I can do that. And your heart starts beating faster. This is exciting. You're getting on the phone, you're calling your parents, you're calling your friends. You won't believe what just happened. What? I got $200 million. What are you talking? And then you're going out, you're celebrating, right? Okay, that's how many of us would begin to feel. What if someone came up and said, I own this pebble. I don't want it anymore. I leave it with you. This is yours now. Do with it as you wish, and you walk away. Whatever. You'd be unmoved, right? You'd be unmoved by this. So Krishna was telling Arjuna, if someone gave you $200 million or someone gave you a pebble, do you have an even mind? Right now, if you took $200 million in rupees and went up into these mountains, you could find yogis, and you could bring you could bring them that money, and you could say, here, this is for you. And many of them would say, what do I need that for? What am I going to do? I'm going to take that money, I'm going to go to Delhi and, I don't know, buy new clothes and an apartment, or I'm not interested in those things. You can keep this. I don't really need it. Right? Unmoved. Right? Unmoved. So this is the first qualification, to have a mind that's peaceful enough to practice that path. Right? That's that path of seclusion, that path of walking away from everything. But then he says something else, and although it doesn't exactly say it in the Bhagavad Gita, I think when we read between the lines, I think this really shook Arjuna up when he heard this. Are you ready to hear what shook Arjuna up? Because if that wasn't enough, this next message, I think he really had to think about this. He said, Arjuna, that's one stage of advancement, but to really be successful at this, you have to come to another stage, another level, where you see people on the same level. People that are kind to you, people that are not so kind to you. People that are your friends, people that are your enemies. You have to be able to see them all with an equal eye. How many of you are familiar with the story of the Mahabharata? Raise your hand. Okay. Few of you aren't. But if you see what Arjuna went through in the Mahabharata, how his family was treated, their cousins tried to kill them. They tried to burn down their house. They used other attempts at assassination. And the worst thing that they did was when they dragged their wife, Draupadi, into that public arena, tried to strip her naked and insulted her in some way. Oh, how can I see those people in the same way that I see kind people? I don't know if I have that ability. I feel too emotionally invested in this. I don't know if I can do that kind of yoga. And then Krishna goes on, and he describes how you go alone. You practice celibacy. You sit down very straight. You try to control the mind. Wherever it wanders, you try to bring it back. And you have to do this for who knows how long. Arjuna says, I don't think I can do that path. I don't think that path is practical for me. I don't think I'll be successful at it. And he's feeling kind of down now. He's saying to Krishna, well, what now? I feel like I'm not successful materially. My material life has led to full-on anxiety. And I feel like this spiritual path, I can't accomplish it. So it's like I'm a failure materially, I'm a failure spiritually. Krishna says, no, Arjuna, there's no need to worry. You can be a yogi. You just need a suitable practice and detachment. The right practice for you with the right level of detachment, the right approach to detachment. Not everyone can be so detached that they just walk away from everything. But really this detachment has to develop within. It has to develop inward. And so he says, then he says this very famous verse. And after he says this verse, things shift in the Bhagavad Gita. There's a change, a powerful change. You get into really deep, beautiful stuff. Are you ready for that verse? He says, Yoginam apisarve sham. Amongst all the varieties of yogis, Madgaten antar atmana, the one who's always meditating on me and abiding me deep within their own heart. Shradhavan, with great faith, Bhajato ye mam, they're worshiping me with love. Same yuktatamo mataha, I say that person, that yogi, is the most advanced of all, is the most connected with me through yoga. That is my opinion, he says. Oh, okay. So you're saying that I don't have to walk away from the world. I don't have to sit still and stare at the top of my nose. I may still not see every living being on a perfectly equal level, but you have a path that I can jump right into. And you're saying that one who's practicing that path is the highest yogi of all. You're saying they do that by always thinking about you. Now, why Krishna is going to become a big question. Why meditating on him? But by meditating on you, I can achieve the highest platform of yoga. Then the next question would be, how do I always think of you? But not only, the Krishna doesn't only answer that, but he shows why Krishna is the ultimate object of meditation. And in doing so, he goes back to the older texts, the Vedas and the Upanishads, and he shows through using the same language in those texts that when they spoke of the Supreme, when they spoke of the absolute truth, when they spoke of the origin of everything, they were speaking about him as a person. And he speaks about this for quite some time. Chapter 8, 9, 10. In chapter 10, Arjuna turns to Krishna and says, all these wonderful things that you're saying about yourself, I accept it all. And you know why? Because you're not the first person to tell me this. All the great sages say this about you. And he goes right down the list. Vyas, who compiled the Vedic literature. And he lists a whole list. I call them the A-list sages, right? These are like the real leaders amongst the sages, right? He says, all of them have said that about you. He was a king. So he had the top level sages walk into his palace and he would discuss with them. So he was well aware of this. And he said, and now you're telling me this yourself. Tell me how I can meditate on you. And in the 7th chapter, in the 10th chapter, Krishna shares how we can see him behind everything, right? The light of the sun, the light of the moon, the taste of water, etc., etc., etc. So he's showing you can always be thinking of me, you can always be meditating me, not necessarily by going out into the forest and sitting quietly, but by seeing me in everything. And through processing your experiences in life, the responsibilities that you have in life, the ups and downs that come through carrying out those responsibilities, if you can process them through the knowledge of the Bhagavad Gita, you can see God's hand in everything. He gives this example of like pearls strung on a thread. If you look at a thread with all these pearls on it, you don't see the thread. You see the pearls. But you know that the thread must be there, right? They wouldn't be hanging like that if there's no thread. And he's saying, similarly, you can learn how to see me supporting everything. You can see me in everything. You can see everything in me. You can realize me in your own heart through this practice of yoga. And then Arjuna says, essentially what he says is, I've heard all this about you and I accept it, that you are the origin of all, that you are supporting everything. Can you show it to me? Can I see it I'm hearing it through my ears. Can I see it with my eyes? And that's the 11th chapter, the universal form. We're right from the very form of Krishna, he shows everything's within it. All the entire material realm in all of its energies, all the devas, everything is inside Krishna's form. Arjuna sees that, fully surrenders. So Bhagavad Gita is saying there are many different paths one can follow. They're authentic. But there's something about the path of love. There's something about the path of bhakti. All other paths, as taught in the Bhagavad Gita, culminate in divine love. And one can practice it right from the beginning. So you can practice Ashtanga Yoga, still the mind, and then with the still mind, focus it on God within your heart with love. You can practice Jnana Yoga, analyze all your material desires, break them all, become free of material desires, and surrender unto God. All this is described in Bhagavad Gita. What is it? Bahunam janmana ante. At the end of many births and deaths, Jnanavan, the one who's achieved the goal of Jnana Yoga, the one who possesses Jnana now, knowledge, Jnanavan mam prapadyante, the one with knowledge surrenders unto me. Right? When he describes Ashtanga Yoga in the 6th chapter, what does he describe that they meditate on? And what do they see? He says they see me within their own heart. And then they see me everywhere. And they see everything in me. And then he says a beautiful thing, Krishna says, for one who sees me everywhere and sees everything in me, right? I am never lost to them. Now, this is a big statement. I'm never lost to them. In other words, they're always connected to me. But then he says something else that's very special. And something that, with all the research I've done, I don't think you get a message like this anywhere in all the previous texts. Not in the Vedas, not in the Upanishads, which all talk about, they have their, what's called upasana. They have their teachings on worship. You can worship this god, you can worship this goddess. But the way these earlier texts speak is that you worship them. Through worship, you express your gratitude and appreciation. And then they reward you with something of this world. You never hear that by worshiping the god of fire, that the god of fire becomes touched and moved by that. Rather, it just says that he reciprocates and provides for you. But Krishna says something very different, something very emotional, something very, very much on the level of the heart. He says, for one who sees me everywhere and sees everything in me, I am never lost to them. They're always connected to me within their own mind and heart. But then he says, and they are never lost to me. The same way that they're meditating on me, I'm meditating on them. Their love and devotion has touched me, and I feel it in my own heart, and I'm feeling it right back towards them. This is something special. This is something beyond what we've read in the earlier texts. And this is part of the reason why bhakti is so absolutely beautiful. Right? That's Ashtanga Yoga taken, achieving the goal of Ashtanga and then taking it to bhakti. Achieving the level, the goal of Jnana Yoga and taking it to bhakti. But what Krishna is saying in the Bhagavad Gita is you can start with bhakti. And bhakti of all these paths is unique because it's the only path where the means and the end are the same. The practices, what are the practices of bhakti? Hearing about Krishna, chanting about Krishna, meditating on Krishna, worshiping the form of Krishna, etc. You do them as the practice, and the same thing is done in the perfection. Take Ashtanga Yoga. When you've achieved the goal of Ashtanga Yoga, you don't keep practicing asana, you don't keep practicing pranayama. These things were a means to an end, right? But in bhakti, the means and the end are the same. It's just a maturation. It's the most holistic of these paths. For instance, what they're doing right there, the way they're singing and dancing. The Srimad Bhagavatam will give us a look into the spiritual realm beyond the material worlds. And we see they're doing the exact same thing there. So how do we find the path? The Bhagavad Gita is taking all the previous teachings, churning them, validating these paths, but saying that the clearest. Arjuna asks Krishna a similar question at the beginning of the 12th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. Who understands yoga better? This is literally the language that he uses. Who knows yoga better? Those that worship your personal form with love, devotion, or those who worship the impersonal absolute, just the non-personal energy. Krishna says straight up, he doesn't hesitate. Those who worship my personal form know yoga better. Right? He says those that worship the non-personal energy, they can, if they do that over the course of a very long time, and working for the welfare of all living beings, then they can eventually come to me. But to those who worship my personal form with devotion, I become the quick deliverer. Once they turn to me, I immediately get involved. So that path he recommends throughout Bhagavad Gita. And Bhagavad Gita is really the comparative study of these different paths. Is that okay? All right. Thank you very much. Thank you for a good question. Any other questions out there? We're looking for more questions. Yes, sir. With a lovely lavender turban.
Hello, hello. So, how can I align my energy? Like, I was told that my energy is all over the place, and how am I able to align my energy?
Very good question. How do we align our energy? Or let's say, like, how do we align it with the divine, or how do we align it with God? And if our instructions on it, or our language on it, remain vague, then it becomes very vague how to proceed. But texts like Bhagavad Gita, texts like Srimad Bhagavatam, they speak clearly. Um, they kind of blow away the haze and they get really clear. One common way for alignment, a simple way that they commonly speak about that alignment, is to dedicate three things: one's body, one's words, and one's mind. These these go in a certain order. The body is the easiest to align. The words are more challenging, but they can be done. But the most difficult is to align the mind. That's the most elusive and difficult to control. But just think of it. In other words, you say, I want to be an instrument of love and peace on behalf of the divine in this world. I want to align myself with that. So now that's your goal. It's a stated goal. You set the intention that's what I want to do. You take up practices to help you do that. Daily reading of Bhagavad Gita, let's say. That would be a practical way. Daily meditation practice, and so on. If one's a householder, they may do things like give in charity. They may apply other things to help them develop the mindset of being an instrument of God in their life, being fully aligned. Then practical life hits and tests that conviction. You're walking on the train, you step onto the platform, and then you step from the platform onto the train. And as you're stepping onto the train, there's someone, or let's even flip it the other way, because really you're supposed to let everybody off first, right? So let's say you're trying to get off the train, but there's somebody else rushing in. They should have waited for you to come off. That's the etiquette, polite thing to do. But instead, they're rushing in, being inconsiderate. And as they rush in, they hit your shoulder and you kind of are kind of rudely bumped into. All right? Now, there's a temptation immediately to respond on the bodily level. And some people can't resist doing that. They shove that person. What are you doing? Right? But you've made a conviction, I want to dedicate my body that it's entirely aligned and harmonious with the will of God. And I feel that to do that would not be in line. I got that under control. I'm not going to push the person. But I do feel like sharing a few choice words with them. Right? Right. So I didn't push them, but I said, watch your step. Hey, what's the matter with you, idiot? Don't you know that you're supposed to wait till everybody gets off the train? So but then maybe we in English we say you bite your tongue, right? But you don't speak. I don't want to speak like that. I want to gain control of my words. Yogis think words are a big thing for the yogis. In the Bhagavad Gita 17th chapter, it talks about the austerities of speech. Would you like to pull that up? You know the verses? That what comes out of our mouth, one, it has a lot to do with what's come in through our ears. And two, what comes out of our mouth does go back into our ears. And it has a lot to do with what fluctuates in our mind, where our mind stays. So the yogis, I'm from New York. We just get used to talking a lot, talking. Oh my God, right? Most people don't slow down and think, what are the value of my words? Am I sharing words that are helpful? Am I sharing words that are useful? Am I sharing words that are just creating more distraction in this world? Do my words bring a type of healing, or do my words actually bring harm? Do we really slow down and consider it, or do we just speak as we're triggered to speak? Now, Bhagavad Gita speaks about the austerity of speech, and I'm sure my assistant has pulled it up. This is Bhagavad Gita, chapter 17, text 15. Ready? Would you like to learn how to align your speech with the divine? Yes? Okay, then you have to listen very carefully now. Austerity of speech consists in speaking words that are truthful, pleasing, beneficial, and not agitating to others. Right? If I were to say, "What's the matter with you?" bumping into me like that, it's probably going to agitate that person. Might also agitate other people in the area too. Right? Do I want to speak like that? Austerity of speech consists in speaking words that are truthful, pleasing. This is truthful just right there. How careful are we that we always speak the truth? In Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, which are all about stilling the mind, all the advice one needs to have a still, peaceful mind, he provides the things that we should refrain from doing. Yamas. And he begins with violence. Right? And then, next one, satyam, telling the truth. Right? Because if we're trying to settle the mind and at the same time stirring it up, we'll never be successful. Violence stirs up the mind. Speaking lies creates all kind of anxiety in the mind. Someone that's untruthful will not have a peaceful mind. And so, truthful. Can I really go deeper? Maybe we all feel I'm a truthful person. Relatively. For the most part. But how deep do we go in our truthfulness? How deep will we go? This is important. So they have to be truthful. The word should be pleasing. If we take all the qualities of the yogi, we can basically categorize them in two. One is simplicity, and the other is kindness. The yogi is trying to move through the world in such a way to not disturb the minds of other people. So the words should, one, be truthful, two, they should be pleasing. Have you ever practiced the art of speaking pleasing words? Saying things to people that are pleasing to them. Truthful, but pleasing. I want to thank you for what you've done. I really appreciate the way that you do things. I've slowed down and I've observed and I've seen it, and this is really nice. Speaking pleasing words. That's one way of speaking pleasing words. There's going to be another way of speaking pleasing words that comes up here. But truthful, pleasing, beneficial. What I'm speaking, the vibration, this whole world is vibrating in one way or another. When I speak, it sends out another vibration that enters into other people's ears and vibrates their eardrums, and then sends a vibration to their mind. What I'm about to speak, is it going to be beneficial for them? Is it going to be helpful for them? Is it going to bring good into their lives? Or will it be a distraction? Will it be a disturbance? Will it in some way disturb their path to the divine? Will it agitate or, let's say, distract them from the higher things in life? How much of our words are really valuable? What if we could measure it? What if we had a meter that we could just wear around our neck that took in everything we said and it could measure? Today, 86.3% of what you said was not beneficial. Right? It might be like that. It might be. I talked about this television show, and then I talked about how people are bothering me in life. And then I went on and on about politics, but it really didn't change anyone's mind or do anything. I was just kind of venting. And then I complained about work a bit, and then I did this and that. What are we doing with our lives here? We're not aligned. We're not aligned if we're just all this garbage coming out of our mouth. There's a Sanskrit word, prajalpa. Prajalpa, it kind of means like village talk, like talk that just is not, it's not coming through a filter of wisdom. It's just coming out, right? So, truthful, pleasing, beneficial. Oh no. Okay. Not agitating to others. Really thinking about what I'm saying. Is it going to hurt them? Or agitating, is it going to make them want things that they don't need? Or is it going to bring peace to their minds? And then finally, and also in regularly reciting the Vedic literature. Using your mouth, we've all got this sound system, right? Just like this thing, we've all got one right here, right? And it comes out of this speaker. And just like if you gave every person in the world an hour and you gave them this microphone and that speaker, how are they going to use it? What are they going to do with it? Some people might just get up and just start shouting obscene. There's probably a lot of people that would do that. If you give me a microphone, I'm just going to start shouting out all these obscenities. The people would definitely do that. People do that. and people would use it in different ways and in other reasons. But could they use it in a way that's beneficial? And if they wanted to use it in a way that's beneficial, what would they have to take in so that they could send out a positive vibration? And amongst the yogis, they say the best source is you go to the Vedic literature, right? You memorize it, you take it in, and then you can also vibrate it out. And now you're really in line. We spoke earlier how there's a vibration going through this universe of eternal knowledge. You can vibrate that knowledge. You can vibrate it with your own body, with your own voice. And now you're fully in line with that spiritual divine energy. So body, then words, and then finally mind, right? Maybe I don't push the person. Maybe I don't say something nasty to them. I just button my lip. But what happens in my mind? Does my mind begin to say, what a jerk? All the same things I wanted to say with my voice, am I saying them in my mind? Or can I, at that very moment, can I reflect? Can I reflect on what I've heard from the Vedic texts? Can I reflect on what I've seen in the character and behavior of elevated souls? Can I reflect on the idea that I've bumped into people going into the train myself too, and now I'm getting all upset with this person for doing the exact same thing? We're all prone to creating some kind of accidents or doing things a little bit wrong, and now I'm holding this person to a standard that I don't hold my own self to. There's a famous story, you may have heard of it before. I don't know exactly where it got around, but it's one of these stories. Maybe it was like from Chicken Soup for the Souls or something. I'm not sure where it came from. But there's a story in New York that a man was riding on the subway, and from his seat, seated across from him was a man, a parent, apparently, and he had like three of his children there, and the children were just like very misbehaved. They were really playing rough, and they were being very loud and yelling and screaming, and the parent was doing nothing about it. And the person watching this was thinking in their mind, what kind of inconsiderate person would allow their children to behave this way? It's creating a disturbance for everyone on the train. I can't imagine how this person could be so inconsiderate. What a creep, And then he finally couldn't take it anymore. Said, "Sir, could you please do something about your children's behavior here? It's disturbing everyone." And then the person just turned up and said, "I'm so sorry. I apologize. We just got word that my wife, their mother, has just died. And they don't know how to process it, and I'm sorry, I'm out of it too." And then they realized, who's the inconsiderate one? I've been the inconsiderate one now. I came and I spoke to them kind of harshly, condemning them without really knowing what their situation is. You know. So can we move through this world more thoughtful? Can we move through this world thinking before we speak? And can we address our own thoughts, reflect on deeper knowledge, and reprogram our own minds so that we don't respond that way internally? That we begin to see the good in every living being. And we begin to see every living being as good. And we feel a kind of connection and even a kind of affection for every living being. Now we're beginning to align ourselves with the divine. Right? Body, mind, and words all together. Is that helpful? Okay, thank you. Remember that one, body, mind, and words. It's in many Vedic verses. Let's say this, body, words, mind. Thank you. Yes, we have a question here and then over there.
Hare Shri Krishna. In relation to what you just said, truthfulness might not be pleasing always. So, how do you deal with that?
Well, you were very observant there, right? Because it's demanding two things from us: to be truthful, but also to speak pleasantly. How do we do it? It's not always easy, but we have to. A refined person finds a way to do it. A refined person, if we're very thoughtful, and if it really becomes our intention, we'll find a way to do that. I'll give you one example from my own life that I've observed. Nearly 40 years ago, I had first met my own guru. And he was speaking to a large crowd of people in a temple in Brooklyn, New York. And in the temples, in the ISKCON temples, almost always there's a Murti of Srila Prabhupada, our founder. And usually that Murti is it's incredibly realistic. So if you see it from a bit of a difference, it looks like a real, a living human being sitting there. And so at the end of my guru's talk, someone raised their hand and asked a question. Why is that man sitting there so still? He hasn't budged an inch this entire time you've been talking. Okay. So my guru needs to answer his question. He needs to answer it truthfully. He needs to answer it in a way he doesn't embarrass this person. Right? Because that wouldn't be pleasing. Oh my God, I'm such a fool. What an idiot I am. And there's another consideration too, is that in the mind of all of the bhaktas there, all of the devotees there, they understand that that form is actually a manifestation of that person. And to speak of it as just being a material object, it kind of does something a little unpleasing in the heart of all the bhaktas. You understand? So how to answer that question? So this is what he said. And I share this to say that if it becomes our intention, our speech can become empowered. So he said, he is teaching us patience. Do you remember the other thing he said? It's slipping my mind. He said two things. He said he is teaching us patience, and he said something else. I'm sorry, it's slipping my mind right now. But you can understand. I'll give you another example. And so in this way, he satisfied that person, taught him a nice lesson, didn't embarrass him, and satisfied the hearts of everyone that was there all in one time. Now, there was another time, my guru, when he was in his late 40s, he went back into the university. And it was a unique situation because he was an undergraduate student, but at the same time, he was actually a historic figure in a new religious movement because he was the secretary and very closely associated with Srila Prabhupada, the founder of a worldwide spiritual movement. So he became quite a quick sensation in the academic world of religious studies. And therefore, he was invited to do things that undergraduate students never did, was speak at their large conferences. And he spoke at I think it's called I forget what it's called, Conference of World Religion or something like that. It's a big academic conference. So he delivered a talk there. And then his professor was in the audience and asked him a question. And this was a very tricky question to answer. The question was, to understand the Srimad Bhagavatam, does one need to be, excuse me, must one need to be a devotee? Does one need to be a bhakti yogi? Now, from the traditional perspective, yes, you do. You do not understand it unless you're approaching it from the angle of devotion. If you approach it from an academic point of view, you will not really fully understand the message. But at the same time, to say that at an academic conference, it's insulting, and you lose your credibility, actually. People say, oh, they're not capable of operating on an academic level. So his professor intentionally put him in a very difficult position with a very difficult question to answer, right? Are you a traditionalist that does not know how to, you're a traditionalist on one end, but you don't know how to operate outside of your tradition and respect everyone else? Or do you respect the academics, but do you kind of abandon your tradition in doing so, sell out your tradition? Right? Tough question to answer. So what he said was, do you need to be a devotee to understand Srimad Bhagavatam? No, because you have me as a friend. Okay. He said no, because you have me as, and in doing so, he upheld the idea that one actually must be a devotee, or at least hear from a devotee to understand it. And at the same time, he showed, I'm not like a exclusivist. You're my friend. I do appreciate you. I appreciate you. I appreciate what you give. I'm your student. I appreciate all this about you. And I see you as a friend. So in this way, he spoke words that were both truthful and pleasing. So becoming a yogi and becoming a bhakta, becoming a devotee, it means one's character is being refined. There's 26 qualities of a devotee that are listed in the sacred texts. And amongst them is they're a poet, right? A poet is a person that they look at the world a bit differently than others, with a bit more sensitivity, and they look at language and use language with a greater care, right? Greater care and finesse. And so a devotee, when you're really meditating on the beauty of Krishna's character and the beauty of the devotees of Krishna, then there should be a refinement in one's mind, in one's behavior, in one's words, that can give one the power to both speak truthfully and pleasing at the same time. Okay? Thank you very much. Yes, sir.
Actually, how to meditate on Krishna actually is kind of some picture. How to meditate on Krishna. We have to imagine some picture form, like people meditate on breath or stomach up and down. How to meditate on Krishna actually? Some picture form, or you have to imagine something.
How to meditate on Krishna? Is a picture helpful? This is a good question. This leads us to a broader discussion. If you walk into a temple, you'll see a form of Krishna, maybe Radha and Krishna, on the altar, right? Now, the seva that's being done in the temple, it has been handed down for centuries. The mantras that are chanted, the offerings that are made, have been handed down over the ages. And along with the process, the external process, there's a message of what's meant to happen internally, what happens inside. So one can meditate on the form of Krishna, an external form of Krishna. But what should happen within? Now, in the 11th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, this question gets brought up about meditating on Krishna, how one can do it. And a king named Nimi asked these Navayogendras, these 9 expert yogis, all about bhakti yoga. And he asked them specifically about this temple worship, worshiping a form, whether it be in the form of a picture or in the form of a stone or wood or whatever it might be. And he gives some really beautiful instructions, and I think they're relevant to your question. Would you like to hear them? He says, this is so important. Let me share what he shared just before that. The sages shared just before that. They said that there are devotees of Krishna on 3 different levels: beginner, intermediate, and fully realized. And he describes each one. And what a really important one is the beginner or the neophyte. Would you like to hear what he says about them? He says, Archiyam eva haraye, pujam ye shradhayate, natad bhakteshu chanyeshu, sa bhakta prakrita smritaha. He says, Archiyam eva haraye. They walk into the temple, they see the archa vigraha, the carved form of Krishna in the temple. Archiyam eva haraye. They'll bow down to that. Pujam ye shradhayate. With faith, they'll make an offering to that form. They see God in the temple. But then it says, Natad bhakteshu chanyeshu. But they don't see God in the other devotees, and they don't see God in other people. Natad bhakteshu chanyeshu. Sa bhakta prakrita smritaha. That bhakta is a prakrita bhakta, a materialistic bhakta, a bhakta on the superficial level. They're not very deeply realized in their love and their devotion. They can see it in the external form, but they can't see God in the heart of every living being. So it's good that you're seeing God in the external form. It's good that you bow down. It's good that you make an offering. All these things are good, but it's meant to lead somewhere else. It's meant to lead to deeper vision. And so that's what he describes when he describes the worship of the form in the temple. He says, with the permission of one's guru, one should worship the form of Krishna that they find most dear. They should bathe themselves and dress in clean clothes. They should gather all of the elements that they would like to offer: flowers, scented water, fragrant oils, nice fruits, etc. They should be gathered. One should place the form that they're going to worship in a nice place. They should sit themselves in a nice way. And then with the proper mantras, they should begin to offer the different elements to Krishna, thinking themselves as the eternal servant of God. They set aside their temporary designations, their temporary identities, and they relate on the eternal level. I am the eternal servant of God. That's who I really am. Then it says that by doing this, one cuts the knot in the heart, the materialistic knot in the heart, through this daily meditation. Identifying one as the eternal servant and bringing one's mind in a powerful way to that form, there's a purification on the internal that takes place. And the goal that's met through that is that when you step out of the temple, you see God in the heart of everyone. And you see God in your own heart. And you see God in the sun. And you see God in the moon. You see God in fire. You see God in all the elements. You see God everywhere. You don't see anything in this world disconnected from God. Now, when we go to the 4th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says how to learn the truth by approaching a guru. He says, Tadvati pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya upadekshanti te jnanam jnaninas tattvadarshana. Approach a spiritual master with humility. Offer your respects to them. Respectfully place your questions before them and offer them service. These people can enlighten you with truth because they are the tattva darshana. They've seen the truth themselves. Okay? Then he says what it is that they share with you, what it is that they give you, what it is that you learn from them. Would you like to hear that verse? This is Bhagavad Gita text 4:35. Having obtained real knowledge from a self-realized soul, you will never fall again into such illusion, for by this knowledge you will see that all living beings are but a part of the Supreme, or in other words, that they are mine. In other words, seeing truth means seeing everything in connection to its origin, everything in connection to God. Illusion is when we see anything separate from God. So that's why one can meditate on God in a carved form. One can meditate in God in a painting or picture. These are useful to bring because they involve our senses. Our senses are bringing data that goes to the mind. So if we can bring in the data that's related to God, that's the form of God, then the mind becomes infused with that data, with that vision. So a carved form can be helpful. A painted form can be helpful. The name is also non-different from God. We can meditate on the name. And particularly in the practice of Kirtan, it's easy to meditate on the name because of the music, because of the beat, because of the sound, and because of the united, that when you do it together with the group of people, that much easier to bring our mind and deeply absorb the mind in that form of God. So whether it's carved form, painting, whether it's sound, mantra, kirtan, these are all ways we can bring our mind to God. They're all valid. When one becomes more adept, they can just sit and feel God in their heart and meditate on God spontaneously. They can, if they've heard the leelas, the pastimes of God, they can sit silently and meditate on those pastimes. So whether they're meditating on the name of God, the form of God, the qualities of God, the pastimes of God, nama, guna, rupa, lila, one can meditate on God in any of these ways. Some of them are going to be easier and more approachable for the beginner. Some of them are going to be more approachable for one who's become a bit more accustomed and purified in it. But they're all valid. Yeah. And especially this kirtan cannot be recommended highly enough. It's really where the mind naturally becomes absorbed. But we must never forget that it's leading to this goal, that I not only see God in this form, that's just the beginning, but that by meditating on this form, I learn to see God in my own heart and in the hearts of every living being, in nature, in the sun, seeing God everywhere. That until we've come to that level, we haven't really advanced so much. That's where we need to get. Okay. Is that all right? We have time for maybe one or two more questions. Yes.
Well, mine is a bit of a long question. Do we all have the same God? Even in different forms, religions, or beliefs?
God is one, right? In the Srimad Bhagavatam, it says this non-dual God manifests in many ways. And in different cultures and different languages, people have different names. And according to how much has been revealed, they'll speak of that God in different ways. But there's only one. And every living being has that God in their own heart. So it's not that you have one. Sometimes they use the example of if you have the sun and then you have many pots of water, the one sun shows up in every pot. Right? The same one sun is there in all the different pots. In the same way, there's one God, but that one God appears within the heart. The same God appears in the heart of every living being. So I have a connection with that God, and you have a connection with that God. And in this way, you and I are firmly connected. Just like the tree has one root and there are many leaves on the tree, but every leaf is connected to every other leaf because they all are connected to that root. And when we really know that, when we really have faith in that, when we really understand that, we feel that connection to every living being. If we're not feeling that, we still haven't gone deep. We need to feel that. But yes, we all have the same God. Sometimes people whose spiritual understanding is more shallow think our God is real and their God is not. Right? They don't have that ability to go deeper, to understand more deeply. They're still confused by external identities. I'm from this nation, I'm from this religion, I'm from this background. They're from another one, they're foreign, theirs is bad, ours is the right one, theirs is the wrong one. Like that. Okay? All right, thank you. One last question? Yes.
The definitions of prophet and acharya, same? Different? Prophet and acharya.
My understanding of the English word prophet means someone that sees the future. They can give prophecy. They can prophesize. So prophet means, in Sanskrit, there's a term that it says that yogis can achieve this siddhi, trikalagya, knowledge of the three different phases of time, past, present, and future. So a prophet, I suppose, a true prophet, would have that yogic ability of trikalagya. Whereas acharya literally means, achar means behavior. And so acharya means one who's teaching through their behavior. Literally, that's what it means. And then the way that is commonly implied is sometimes it means like one's guru, we speak of as acharya, or it can mean within a lineage, certain figures become the teachers of the gurus. Certain figures are so prominent and their teachings are so important that they're known as acharyas. That that within the lineage, everyone identifies their teachings as very valid and important. And then even within a particular institution, there may be the founder acharya. Like for instance, in the Ramanuja Sampradaya or the Sri Sampradaya is sometimes called the Ramanuja Sampradaya because he's such a prominent acharya that his teachings are the lineage is founded on his teachings in a sense. And then in our own ISKCON, then Srila Prabhupada is our founder acharya. You and I may have disagreements about things, but we both agree that we're trying to understand how he presented it. So then that's shared, founder acharya. Okay. It has been a great joy to spend this evening with you all. I thank you all for coming and spending your time, energy this way, all of us aligning ourselves together this way through wisdom, aligning ourselves together in this way through sound and music and mantra, aligning ourselves through the food that we eat. We should all be ingesting the food on the same, vibrating on the same level. It helps us all vibrate together, align ourselves together. I thank you. As always, I'll say that I'm here every night while this festival is going on for the next 4 weeks. You're welcome to come. My friend Yogi True teaches a yoga meditation class in the hall at 8 a.m. Super nice. It's really worth checking out. 8 a.m. Yogi Charu. I'm here every morning except Monday morning, so I'm not tomorrow morning, teaching at 9 a.m., 9 till 10, speaking on bhakti, speaking on Vedanta, speaking on yoga. But otherwise, every other day of the week from 9 until 10, I would be very happy to see you there. If people would like to get recordings of those classes or others that I've given, simply approach Gabriella here, and she'll be happy to connect you with that kind of information. Thank you again. Hari Om Tat Sat. Thank you. So kind. Hari Om.